Hi, this is Brian Hogan at Kudrow Group, and today I'm going to be having a discussion with our General Counsel, Steve Sebastian, about some of the language that we have available to you on our website. If you aren't aware of that, I want to encourage you to go ahead and take a look at that. We have some recommended language there. Language for defined benefit plans, defined contribution plans, federal plans, military plans, and some state plans. So do take a chance and look at that. I'm going to go ahead and put a website up on the screen. In case you haven't been there, you can go check that out. So with all that said, I just want to say welcome, Steve. How are you today?
I'm awesome. We're talking about separation agreement language. How much better day could it be?
Okay, good. Well, before we get too far into the discussion of the language itself, how about you give us just a little bit of a background on your experience in the field?
Okay. I've spent a lot of years, over 15 years, with law firms, typically large law firms, working exclusively in the ERISA and employee benefits area, drafting plan documents, helping companies to administer their plans, dealing with legal and ERISA compliance, and all of that includes, drafting quadro procedures and model quadros and things like that, as well as reviewing quadros for plans. And for the last couple of years, I have kind of flipped sides and have been assisting domestic relations attorneys in, valuing and dividing retirement assets and dealing with those ERISA plans. And that ERISA experience on the other side, I think, really helps me to assist DR attorneys on this side.
Yeah, it gives a unique perspective, sort of see the Kudrow from both sides of the desk, those that are preparing it and also those that are reviewing it.
Yep.
Well, today we're going to be talking about defined benefit language, the language we have on our website. So I wondered if you could maybe just start with an overview of what that language is and in general what it's doing.
Well, obviously it's something that you would insert into your separation agreement that would handle, any traditional defined benefit pension plan. And the language we're talking about today is more for private employer plans covered by ERISA and not necessarily, public government plans and some things of that nature. And basically just calculates and divides, the marital portion of a defined benefit pension plan and addresses some of the issues that need to be addressed in there.
Okay, now one thing that we see, it's not uncommon, is to see a separation agreement language that says something similar to husband has a pension and wife is going to receive half. What would be the issues that you might see with language that says something like that?
Well, with a defined benefit pension, they're unique, much different creature than a 401k or other defined contribution plans. So I've seen multiple cases litigated based on language like that, when one party will say, well, hey, it says half. It didn't say when that half is determined, so that means half at retirement. I get half of your total benefit at retirement. And then, of course, the participant is arguing, no, that means half of what I had at divorce. Also, there are different ways for calculating what is a marital portion, including things we call coverture fractions and things of that nature. So there are lots of details in how you divide a benefit that need to be worked out before you go into that judgment entry, or you're just going to be back in court litigating the specifics.
Okay, well, how about we take a look at some of the language that we have in this defined benefit document. Maybe you can tell us what you think is the most critical piece of the language that you've set out here.
Certainly. Ours is broken out by section, and that first section, amount of benefits assigned, is going to be the most important for some of the reasons I was just discussing about, the language that you just mentioned as well. I mean, that section basically defines what is the marital portion of the pension plan, and this language awards 50% of that amount. Now, of course, this is something you can download in a Word format document, and you can change some of those things, but to make sure that you define what is the marital portion and award a certain percentage or amount of that is certainly the most important part of the agreement.
I would agree with that. A lot of times the questions we get either from an attorney or from a party is, the first question is always, how much do I get? And obviously that's important to lay out specifically in your language here. What exactly is the former spouse receiving? A second question that we get asked quite often is, what happens if one party or the other dies? So what happens if the participant dies? What happens if the alternate payee dies? What happens if they die before they commence? What happens if they die after they commence? All of those kinds of questions are very common. And so I wonder if maybe you could sort of take us into the language here that addresses those pieces and just give us some sense of what is this language doing in relation to the death of one party or the other.
Sure. We actually have 3 of our 8 sections in there are dealing with the death of one or the other party and what happens in that instance. And really the goal of the language is to ensure that each party gets a lifetime annuity, and that for some reason one party does not have an annuity that stops upon the death of the other party and they're left without an annuity. So these sections dealing with death basically deal with whether or not a survivor annuity is going to be awarded and so on, completely with the intent of ensuring that the former spouse gets a lifetime annuity and that annuity doesn't stop upon the death of the participant. But it also deals with what happens to the assigned benefit if the alternate payee dies first, and typically that's going to be revert back to the participant. So it addresses all those situations.
Okay. Well, there's obviously other things that this language does that we're not getting into the details of today. There's a reference to early retirement subsidies and supplements. There's a description of what actions the participant might take that that's being addressed as well. Let me just ask this sort of as we start to wrap up the discussion a little bit. What would be your recommendation for how a family law attorney should use this language? Obviously, the first step is go on the website, download the language, and read it. But from there, what are we recommending, or what are you recommending that an attorney does with this language?
Well, this is drafted to be used kind of as is, to be dropped into separation agreement language. Obviously, there are a few places here where there's a couple of blanks that need to be filled in and some options from which they can choose, but just a few of them. But make sure that you are awarding 50% of the marital portion of a benefit, that's the intent, or some other percent of the marital portion of the benefit. Once you get into offsetting and other specifics of how you're deciding to divide up a pension plan, then at that point it might be a good idea to call us and see if this language is good for that, or if this needs to be tailored to fit the circumstances of the case.
Okay, well, let's talk about that service right there. So let's say an attorney looks this over and decides, this doesn't quite handle the specifics of the situation that he's dealing with or she's dealing with. What would they do at that point? How would they reach out to us? What would the fees or costs be involved with that in this idea of preparing customized language based on something, this is a starting point?
Absolutely. We do that. So just give us a call or send us a request through the mail or online through our online portal and ask us to draft some customized language that will accomplish what the parties and the attorney want to accomplish. The cost for that is $200 an hour. We typically get a $400 retainer, and usually the cost of drafting separation agreement language never is more than the retainer. But I can deal with people, attorneys personally, and make sure that I understand exactly what they're looking to accomplish, and we can get that language drafted for them.
Okay. Well, I just want to say thanks to our listeners for listening in on the discussion today. We hope that this has been helpful to you in some way, perhaps even offering something practical to you. We are available to discuss issues with you. So if there's something specific that comes up that you find in this language or you don't find in this language and want to discuss that with us, feel free to call us. Our toll-free number is 844-721-6500. And also just let you know that there's lots and lots of information available on our website at qdrogroup.com. I'd also invite you just to come back and take a look at other podcasts on other topics that we'll be presenting here. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you soon.